Thanks, folks, for coming in at the noon hour instead of 12:30. We've been doing all of this work on the regional solicitation to get ourselves prepared. We've got some final work to do today to get ourselves set for the next regional solicitation, and I really appreciate all of you jumping on early to get this work done, and to the exec committee as well for getting on early to hear more about the agenda today at the full tab meeting. So let's call to order the meeting of the Transportation Advisory Board of Met Council. It is Wednesday, September 15th, 2021, 12:06 p.m. And we will do what we've been doing recently, and that is we'll combine roll call and approval of the agenda in a single roll call by Ms. Ernst. So without further ado, Ms. Ernst, would you call the roll, and then we'll seek approval of the agenda as well.
Anderson.
Present, and aye.
Bailey. Bailey, I know I saw you earlier.
There, yeah, I saw him too. He's right there next to you.
Barber.
Here, and I.
And then Barnes and Kelpie are both absent today. Boyles.
Here, and I.
Crimmins.
Here, and I.
Dugan.
Here, and I.
Foster.
Here, I.
Fox. Or Martinson. Geisler.
Here, and I.
Tulani Stevens.
Here, and I.
Patel.
Here, and I.
Hanson.
Present, I.
Solberg.
Here, yes.
Hollinshead.
Here, and I.
Jalali.
Here, I.
Jepson.
Here, and I.
Johnson. Wayne.
Here, and I.
Keeley.
Here, and I.
Lindeke. Or Watson. Look.
He's here.
Yeah.
Or he was.
Bewan.
Here, and I.
For look.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Mattis Castillo.
Here, and I.
Narayanan.
Here, and I.
Petrick.
Here, and I.
Thank you. Reich.
Present, and I.
Sanger.
Member Sanger? Member Sanger?
Here, and I.
Thank you. Schember.
Here, and I.
Stephenson.
Here, and I.
Ulrich.
Here, and I.
Williams. Williams. I saw Janet earlier.
I did too.
Oh, yeah, I don't think the mic is working. Wind Shuttle.
Here, and yes.
Workman.
Here, and I.
Jenna, I saw Mayor Williams on the screen. This is Peter, and she said here, and I. You could
Yep.
read lips. Okay,
Yep.
thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. She's nodding. Thank you.
Good. And did Ms. Ernst, did you get Commissioner Johnson? I was thinking about the agenda and missed that.
Yes. Wayne Johnson standing in for Stan Karwoski. Yes,
Yeah.
we got him.
Okay, Commissioner, welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so thanks, folks. We got an agenda. We'll move on to reports. The only thing I had to report on would have been the executive committee conversation, and that was identical to the one we're going to have in a few minutes here. So I'm not going to bother to report out on anything there and save some time. We don't have anybody from MnDOT here. Is that correct, Ms. Ernst? For agency reports?
Yes, that is what John said.
Okay, so anyone from MnDOT other than John, Member Solberg? Okay.
Mr. Chair, just one item of note for folks, and that is our deputy from State Aid Central Office is accepting a new position, moving off to Hennepin County. Other than that, no additional news at this point.
Okay. Anybody want to comment on MnDOT's work on, or is that maybe the county on Highway 7? That is quite an experience going out on Highway 7. Anyway, MPCA, we've got Member Bewan with us today. Member Bewan, anything you want to report out on?
Oh, thanks.
Just a quick mention that, there are several state agencies that are engaged in the climate change sub-cabinet, and they're strategizing about how to work on climate issues in Minnesota, both climate mitigation of carbon emissions, but also adaptation to changing climate. And I would just say that for TAB members, they're seeking input. The sub-cabinet is seeking input on actions and goals that will help inform and Minnesota's work on climate. And we just wanted to spread the word to the TAB to go to min.gov/climate and encourage your networks to do the same if you have an interest in providing any input or seeing what is happening with the sub-cabinet's work. So that's all I have for today.
All right, so it was min.gov/climate.
That is absolutely right.
Yeah, good. Thanks for that. That's good information to have for all of the elected officials in particular. Carl Crimmins, Member Crimmins, anything for the MAC?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Just a couple ads. The vaccination sites at the airport are going to be open until September 23rd in coordination with the state of Minnesota. Now, the state could extend those closing dates. Third week of August, we had 185,000 people pass through TSA checkpoints. And then we had 101.4 million passengers in July of 2021. And we had 1.9 million passengers in July of 2019. So things are getting better. They're picking up. We're seeing a slowdown in traffic. We don't know for sure if it's from the Delta variant or if it's because school is starting and summer's more or less come to an unofficial closing. So we're seeing cars parking. In April of 2020, we had 1,000 vehicles parked at the airport. And in August of 21, we had 9,000 vehicles. So we're picking up. At the south checkpoint at the airport has been increased from 6 lanes to 9 lanes. And we've added 2 baggage carousels, and we modeled all the existing carousels on the baggage level. For year 2022, the capital improvement budget draft is $260 million for infrastructure construction at the airport. And then Air Canada has resumed service to Toronto on 9/7, and Delta has resumed service to Winnipeg on 9/13. All the reliever airports are improved from 2019. They're doing better now than they were in 2019, and that's all 6 reliever airports. So I just wanted to drop that off. Like I say, we're seeing a softening in passengers, and we can't equate that to either the Delta variant or to the summer's over and people are getting back to work. So that's where we stand right now.
All right, thanks, Member Crimmins. Anybody have any questions for Member Crimmins or any of our other agency reporters? We'll get to Member Barber in a minute.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Is that Member Keeley?
Healy, yep, Burnsville. Could you explain again why the reliever airports are doing better than 2019, even though the main airport is still a little under?
I would be, I could just assume, I really don't know the reason why. We don't poll those people, but I'm thinking that more people want to travel in less occupied spaces. So I think they'd rather fly to a reliever airport and then get into a vehicle and proceed with their business instead of going through the main terminals where there's more contact, there's less separation of people. So I would think that's more the point. St. Paul Airport's increased a lot, and St. Paul Airport, their travel is mostly business. I would say the biggest percentage of St. Paul Airport travel is business, and that's picking up. So that could be business travelers just don't want to fly to the main terminal.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Member Keeley. Thank you, Member Crimmins. And then Member Barber, anything to report out on from the Met Council?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of things. The first is related to the transit onboard surveys. So the transit onboard survey will be kicking off this fall. This is done every 5 years to survey customers on trip purposes, origins, destinations, etc. And then the data is used to augment the regional travel model. Currently, the pre-test for the transit survey is starting this week, and there will be survey takers out on several routes, and survey takers will continue with the actual survey in the coming weeks, and we look forward to bringing that information back to this group as we learn more. And then secondly, the Orange Line Lake Street Station was completed on September 10th, along with MnDOT's 35W at 94 project. Staff has started training and final system testing. The station will open with service on October 18th for local and connecting express service. The Orange Line service connecting all stations, including Lake Street and downtown, is on track to open on December 4th with all-day service connecting Burnsville, Bloomington, Richfield, and Minneapolis. And then lastly, I just wanted to make people aware that Metro Transit is offering a promotional fare for the months of September and October as we build our ridership back up, hoping to entice our riders who had stopped taking buses and trains during COVID back to the system. So rides are being offered for $8 on bus and rail lines. So that's all I have today.
Thanks, Member Barber. Anybody have any questions or comments related to Member Barber's report? Member Foster?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering if it's possible to find out what routes the surveys are going to be done on. Member Barber.
It's done throughout the system. I don't know that it necessarily targets specific routes. I don't know where we're launching first. I think Amy might be on and may be able to answer. If not, we could circle back to you at least with what we're doing for the pre-test runs. So
cool. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Mr. Chair, may I? Commissioner Gotel.
Yes, Commissioner.
You know what? There's been a lot of reports about the mask use or lack thereof on buses and the transit in general. How is the Met Council dealing with this to try to get that up for getting riders back on the buses and the trains?
Sure. I will anecdotally, I'll tell you my experience that I've seen, by and large, I've been on the LRT system, and I'd say there's a large volume of mask usage, which has been good. I'm not saying it's 100%. We are definitely staying on track of it, supplying our operators with masks to hand out. Obviously, the federal requirements for masking extend to the end of the year, so that's something that we'll continue to do, and definitely continuing with the strong messaging that it is a requirement on the transit system. I wouldn't say that we've taken necessarily an enforcement role, but more of an encouragement role, trying to get our riders to comply with the federal guidelines.
Any follow-on, Commissioner?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Sheila Colpe from MnDOT has now joined us. Thanks, John Solberg, for that. Member Colpe, anything you want to report out on from a MnDOT standpoint?
This moment, I do not. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for joining us. All right, and then John Solberg, back to you. Anything to report out on behalf of the TAC at this point in time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just mention ever so briefly, if TAB members saw the TAC agenda, we had 2 items that were on our consent agenda that were pulled off. I believe they're, again, on your non-consent agenda item as well. They were pulled off for the fact that TAC just wanted to make comments that would be on the record for TAB.
All right, and I think when you introduce the various topics in the non-consent portion of the agenda, you can address each of
I will expound on those at that time.
Comments as well. All right, thank you for that heads up.
Mr.
All right,
Chair,
let's move on.
could
Yes.
I circle back really quickly to MnDOT with a question?
Yes, please.
This to anyone from MnDOT. I know that there's a pretty big celebration of the end of the 4.5-year construction from 62 to downtown, and we're all thrilled and excited and enjoying a much better ride. At our city council meeting last night, Mayor Couts brought up the idea of some sort of ribbon cutting or whatever it might be for the new 35W bridge over the river between Burnsville and Bloomington, and she's going to reach out to the Bloomington mayor. But I'm just curious if MnDOT would want to have a role in that and help, because obviously you did the project. But we're thrilled to have it. It's got a pedestrian crossing which didn't exist before, so it's kind of a big deal, and we'd like to give it a little bit of recognition in some sort of ceremony. Is there someone that we could connect with to help coordinate that?
Why don't you send it to me? I'll get it to the correct people. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Member Keeley. That's a nice request, and it is indeed a great improvement. All right.
We have to celebrate when we can, right? We don't get
Yes.
these opportunities.
Anyone else? Questions for any of the agency presenters? All right. Let's move on to the business portion of the agenda. And I thought the TAC did something really smart. Was they listened to the meeting that we had last month and thought some of these non-controversial elements of the regional solicitation can be moved into the consent agenda for the purposes of their work. And our staff is suggesting the same thing here. So we've got 8 items on the consent agenda portion of the business agenda. And I'm wondering if anyone, any member of the tab wishes to remove any item from the consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, this is Sue Sanger.
Member Sanger?
I'm not sure if this should be removed, but I have an observation that applies to many of the items on the consent agenda. May I just state that now?
Is this your observation on the equity issue?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and we've got a couple other observations too. Member Reich has one. I'm thinking that those are going to relate to when we get into the scoring and the application process itself, and it might be good to hold those towards the end. But certainly if, well, I think let's hold that thought if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, just
All right.
as long as we get back to them, that's all.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair?
I think important to do so. And I think, yeah, your comments will be particularly relevant once we get into the situation where we're looking at some potential projects here based on the applications that come in.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
This is Elaine. Her comment will relate to the action item that talks about measures, because equity is a measure in all the applications. So that would be a good time for her to address that. And then also, just note, Amity has her hand up.
oh, say that again, Elaine. You cut out just briefly for me.
Oh, the measures action item has the equity measures in all the applications. That would be a good item where Sue can bring up her comments, because
All right.
that would be addressed as one of the measures.
Okay, so when we get to 2021-32, I'll make a note here to call on Member Sanger.
Okay.
All right, and then Member Foster?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, but I just forgot to take my hand down.
Oh,
So I'm
okay.
good.
All right. All right, so we've got 8 items on the consent agenda. Not hearing that anyone wants to remove an item from the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items as shown?
Anderson moves.
Second, Boyles.
Who'd the second come from, Boyle? Okay. We got a motion by Member Anderson, second by Member Boyles on the approval of the consent agenda items in a single motion. Any further discussion? Roll call, please. Ms. Ernst?
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Cowpy,
Aye. Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox, Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Patel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Buen,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Petrick, Reich,
Aye.
Singer,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everybody. The motion passes. All of the items contained in 1 through 8 on the consent portion of the agenda are approved. 2138, 2137, 2129, 2131, 2133, 2134, and 2136. Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the non-consent portion of the agenda, these items that require action. And something you haven't seen yet is 2021-24. That was inserted at the beginning of the action portion of the agenda because of its relationship to the regional solicitation. And as we go through these non-consent items, as I mentioned earlier, Tax Chair Solberg is going to introduce all of the items, and to the extent he has comments that the TAC wanted us to be aware of prior to having our discussions, he's going to articulate those as well. So, Member Solberg, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we can go ahead and move on to the next slide, which is just an introduction of the 8 items that you have in front of you today on the non-consent agenda. We'll start on the first one, which you mentioned, Mr. Chair, 2021-24, the Regional Bicycle Transportation Network and Bicycle Barriers Update. Go ahead, next slide. So for those of you that are not familiar, the Regional Bicycle Transportation Network and the Bicycle Barrier Updates was a process that began this spring. If you can go ahead and next slide. It was a process that began this spring. It was opened up to the region, and agencies had the ability to request changes to the RBTN and to the bicycle barriers. For those of you that don't have the memory of it, the RBTN was established in 2015, the bicycle barriers in 2017. This was really the first major update to that process, and so you know there will be a cyclical nature to the process. But for our purposes today, there were 27 applications or submitted requests for changes to the RBTN. All 27 were indeed agreed upon between council staff and the requesting agencies. So again, 27 of the 27 were approved. 6 bicycle barriers were additionally added to the network. So those were ones that were requested through locals, again, for the system. This will, again, have updated maps that will be included with the regional solicitation, which will be released for public comment. That's part of the request today. And the final RBTN bicycle barrier updates will be presented to the Transportation Committee here in early 22. TAC did recommend all the changes. Again, there is a working group that is a subgroup of TAC that went through these. So it was not a singular entity reviewing it. It was a representation of the region. And with that, I would conclude my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you would take down the screen, please, and I can see who has questions. All right, does anyone have questions for Chair Solberg with respect to action item 2021-24, which really is the request to accept the RBTN as updated by the agency proposed additions and also the bicycle barrier report as well? Questions on that report? Otherwise, they can entertain a motion. The requested action is that the Transportation Advisory Board accept the updated RBTN, the Regional Bicycle Transportation Network, and Regional Bicycle Barriers report and release it for public comment as part of the 2022 Regional Solicitation Packet. Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved, Anderson.
Second,
Dugan.
Gotell.
Move Member Anderson, second Commissioner Gotell. Further discussion? All right, roll call, please. Ms. Ernst?
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Cowpy,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Patel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Solberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
Edis Castillo,
Aye.
Arianen,
Aye.
Petrick, Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Sue.
Aye.
Thank you. Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, everybody. 2021-24 is approved. The RBTN and regional bicycle barriers updates are accepted and they will be released for public comment, and we'll be seeing these again in the work that we're doing. The next items in the non-consent portion of the agenda, items 2 and 3, which are 21-27 and 21-28, are the matters that Chair Solberg referred to in his initial comments as to why the TAC thought they wanted the tab to understand some of the things that were being offered by them were of concern to them. And so I'll take 21-27 first, which is the unique projects matter, and Chair Solberg will let us all know at the tab what the TAC was thinking about in terms of how they could be of assistance to the tab on this matter.
Can I quick interject? Sorry, I just want to state for the record that Member Fox is here and voted aye on this last one. Thanks, folks. Sorry about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, so this first item, 2021-27, being the unique projects. And again, I think TAB is very familiar with this. TAC did recommend approval of this. However, take it off the consent agenda for one real reason only, and that was just to make sure in the comment that in the record there was comment to TAB to ensure that TAB was aware that TAC wants to clarify that they would be part of the scoring process or would aid the TAB working group in the process. I know the TAB working group is very familiar with this and recognizes that, but we weren't sure that the TAB as a whole understood. So it's really more of a comment that TAC offers its help in being the scorer and helping the scoring process for these projects. Otherwise, no additional comments were received on this, and TAC does recommend that TAB move forward with this.
Thank you, Chair Solberg. Are there questions for Chair Solberg with regard to this matter? Or with the comments of the TAC, which recommended approval? Is there a motion to approve? Let's pull down the screen again, please. Is there a motion to approve 2021-27?
So moved, Anderson.
Seconded, Bailey.
So moved by, who is the mover?
Dugan, but
Dugan moves. Bailey seconds. Mayor Bailey seconds. Further discussion, folks, comments?
Mr.
Mr.
Chair?
Chair.
Yeah, Commissioner Look.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just, I know we've set this unique projects category in motion here. I'm wondering what unique projects are being proposed.
Well, staff care to answer that, but I don't, this is just establishing the category, as I understand. We're approving the category details, but no projects have been proposed yet. That'll be part of the application process that we'll be working on next.
Okay, very
At
much,
least that's
very
my
good, thank you.
understanding, Commissioner. Yeah, Member Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you heard last tab meeting, that I had still some concerns about the weighting criteria for this particular item. I still do agree that innovation should be the highest criteria. I continue to believe that reducing adverse environmental impacts and improving racial equity should be weighted at the same level. I think the output from the work group was really a artifact of the online voting tool that we used. I know that we're not necessarily in a position to change that at this point. However, what I would request is that as we go into future solicitations, that we reevaluate this, because I think those are both two critical issues that are so very important for our region that putting one over the other is something that I still find troubling. And I believe this reflects the will of the council as well. So that would be my request, is that we at least look at it differently after this cycle and have a good conversation about it. And the next time we enter a regional solicitation cycle.
Great, thank you, Member Barber. Any other
Yes,
questions or
Mr.
comments?
Chair,
Yes,
Matt Holland said.
yeah, Member Hollinshead. Yeah, thank
Thank-
you for identifying yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to reiterate what I said at our last meeting in response to Member Barber, that environmental issues have come to be almost synonymous with equity and environmental justice, so that I don't see that raising equity to and lowering environmental to equal status would do anything. I see the ranking as is, as incorporating equity in all categories and then having equity as a separate category. So I think it's fine the way it is, and I would hate to do a disservice to environmental by lowering its points, lowering its ranking. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Member Hollinshead, any other comments? You know, this was a process that we talked about it last month and went through that Mentimeter voting process at the task force level. And this is at least what was passed on to this group was what was reflected in the Mentimeter outcome and discussed at length last month. But certainly, Member Barber, when we get to the point where we start looking at applications, we can have this conversation in the context of the types of unique projects that surface that that might be of interest to us. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
any other comments from members? All right, we got a motion and second on 2021-27, which is to let me get back to my main screen here. Approve the unique projects category details for the 2022 regional solicitation. And let's do roll call, please. Ms. Ernst.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber,
Aye.
Helpy,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Patel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Linda Key,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Ewan,
Aye.
Metis Castillo,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Pedrick, Reich, Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Action transmittal 2021-27 is approved. We have now approved the details for the 2022 regional solicitation for the unique projects category.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
this
is
is
that
this
that
is
Commissioner
Cole.
Wood, or who was that?
This is Cole Henniker.
Yeah, Cole, yes.
I did
Go
just want to remind you all that part of the application is to release an early call for ideas so that we can get some sense for the applicants to Mr. Look's question. And just to note that that'll be released tomorrow. So if you know of any potential unique projects, it's helpful for you as members to promote that. And also that we can bring a summary of that back to you likely at the TAB meeting in December. Not specific details, but we'll bring some summary of what types of projects that we're seeing are potential applicants. So just a note for you all, that would be coming in the next few months.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Henniker. And just another shout out to you for the fine work you did leading that group and helping us through that unique projects discussion. The next matter is the other matter that the TAC pulled off their consent agenda and wanted to make comments to the full tab. That is regarding modal funding ranges, and we've had some other activity or discussion, I should say, from some of our members or ideas expressed from some of our members about potential modification of that. Well, we'll get into that momentarily, but first I want to have Chair Solberg explain the comments or articulate the comments that the TAC had with regard to modal funding ranges. Chair Solberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Next slide, please. So, Mr. Chair and board members, I think one of the things here to recognize is that TAC did recommend approval of for you guys of the modal funding ranges, but the reason we took it off of the consent agenda was in part to make feedback to TAB as a whole. One, in the fact that right now there is flexibility in the current ranges. Obviously, you can see that you have a range for roadways, transit, TDM, bicycle. And so utilize that range, you can make choices. Just a reminder that historically, TAB has selected projects around the midpoint. So as you can see that and compare that to the range, there is flexibility in the process. And then additionally, just to clarify, as part of the application process, that the applicants do see and understand that the TAB does reserve the right to place emphasis on their modal funding ranges as they see it. It's worded a little bit differently, but what TAC's ultimate purpose in this is just, again, to remind the TAB that you do have flexibility and are not locked into a midpoint for selection of projects.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah, comments? Yeah, thank you, Chair Solberg. Was that Member Geisler?
Commissioner Look.
Oh, yeah, we'll pull down the screen again. Commissioner Look, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, to get this discussion on the table, I move that we maintain the funding ranges as they were prior years.
All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Look to approve the funding ranges by mode for the 2022 regional solicitation. That's 2021-28. Is there a second?
Second by Winchell.
Second by Mayor Winchell. All right, now let's go to discussion on this. And we had a good discussion on this at the exec committee. I'll preface this by saying that. And it's something I think that Amy Venowitz could provide some guidance on as well as we go about this discussion. And I know that a couple of our members have expressed a desire to have a conversation around maybe changing some of those midpoints. But I thought as a predicate to that conversation, assuming it might come, that we get a little bit more input from staff on the implications of shifting midpoints from what's proposed to what might potentially be proposed. Amy, are you there?
Yeah, sure, Mr. Chair and members. One of the items we discussed at the executive committee
you might need to go off video. You're breaking up. You might need to go off video.
I'm sorry. Is that better?
It's better.
Okay, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Apologies for that. So what we pointed out in the executive committee is that we adopt ranges, but we also adopt a midpoint to those ranges. And when we come to next fall and staff begins to create what we call funding options or scenarios, we always start from the midpoint of the ranges as our first option. So we will create an option that starts as close as we can get based on the projects that are submitted at the midpoints of the ranges. And typically then we kind of use that as our base scenario. And then based on advice from TAB on other types of scenarios that they might want to see, we create additional options and compare them back to typically the base scenario, which is at the midpoint. So one of the items I would point out is if we take, for example, transit, which currently is proposed to start at a midpoint of 30% of the funding. If that stays as is, that would become the base option next fall. If we adopt a change to that and the midpoint shifts upward, next fall you might see a base option with a midpoint funding scenario of 33, 34, whatever the other number might be. So that is just a clarification that it's not just the funding ranges themselves, but setting the midpoint kind of sets the starting point for next fall.
All right, I'm going to go to Member Jalali and then Member Foster.
Thank you. I have a clarifying question as a brand new TAB member, and also so that I can explain this to my constituents. In the context of this discussion, it would really help me if somebody from staff would just say in an everyday person way what modal funding ranges are, and then also what a midpoint is. I would really appreciate that before we continue. I have a working understanding, but for sake of this meeting and making it more clear, a simple clarification would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Jalali.
Sure, Mr. Chair, I'll give it a shot. Not always the most plain language person. So the funding, if you assume the whole pot is 100% of the money, the funding ranges indicate a range in percentage of what we might spend in that range. And the midpoint is the middle of that range. So I think typically if we take transit, the current midpoint is 30, which would be 30% of the funding. And then the range is 5% on either side, which would be 25 to 35% of the total funding. So as we create funding options next year, we will start with a base giving about 30% of the funding to transit and 14.5% of the funding to bike and ped and 55.5% to roadways. That is the current recommendation for the midpoints. And then TAB has the option to vary from those midpoints based on the total range. For roadways, the total range is 20%, so 10% on either side of the midpoint. For transit and bike and ped, it's 5% on either side of the midpoint. So what we're doing is giving an indication of how we think the funding would fall out. And we will start at the midpoints and we will build other options that fall within those ranges. And then TAB will decide which option eventually to fund.
Thank you. And for funding, you're referring to federal funds, or which funding sources are you referring to?
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, this is the federal funding that comes specifically to the council for allocation. And so when we are setting those funding ranges, it is only on the federal funding piece. We do not include any local match that is being brought and has to be brought by the applicants. And that can vary per project.
Thank you. And this is just to confirm my understanding, and I appreciate everyone's patience as I am new on the tab, but so that I can explain this more clearly to folks who ask me about it in the community, what we are being asked to do is essentially set a ballpark for how much of the federal funds we are spending on each type of modality of way of getting around our community.
Yes.
Mr. Chair and members, correct. That's a very good summary of what we are doing. And as a last point, I would just note that there is language in the application that recognizes the funding ranges, but also specifically adds that TAB does have the authority next fall when you pick your options to go outside of those ranges based on projects submitted and what you see in the submittals.
Thank you. I appreciate this as clarification. Based on the understanding I have now, I am struck by the current balance that is proposed and would be open to flexibility to prioritize other forms of transportation in a balance that's different than what we have. So I'll just leave it at that, and I welcome other folks' thoughts on it, but interested in what others think. And I don't know that I would support the current motion as it's proposed. I think we should be adjusting it. I'll yield back the time, but thank you for clarifying.
All right, thank you, Member Jalali. Member Steve Peterson, anything you wanted to add to what Amy Venowitz had to say?
No, always defer to your boss when they want to speak. So she did a great job. But this, maybe for the members' question too, this isn't all the federal funding we receive for the region. This is a lot of money. It's going to amount to over $200 million that you as TAB will give out next month, but it's still a sliver of the total federal funding that comes to the region. And I think that's maybe just a clarifying point.
Thank you.
Right, thank you. I'm going to go to Member Foster though, now, and then on to Member Nariyanan. Member Foster.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really appreciate the explanation, Amy. That was very helpful for me too. I also think that we should shift the mode ranges and the midpoints. I think if 30% of the funding would go to transit, that does not best represent the priorities, I think, of what the TAB and the council should be. We have talked in the past at previous meetings about how racial equity, economic equity, climate change, how all of those fit into the work that we do. I don't think those ranges address, like the current ranges, I don't think they address our priorities. And this is the place that we can make a systemic change to how we score and like the opportunities that we have for this. So I won't be voting for this motion. I appreciate you bringing it forward, Member Look, and then I do have a separate motion once the discussion is finished here and voting.
All right.
So
So
thank you, Mr. Chair.
You can bring your amendment, or is it? Well, we've got to vote on the main motion unless you wanted to try to amend the main motion to change midpoints or ranges.
Chair, the cleanest way would be if we took the motion before us and voted on that, and then we did another one. That would be the cleanest way to handle it.
I agree.
I am all for cleanliness in TAB meetings, so I will defer to the process.
Mr. Chair.
Member Hollinshead, I'm going to go to Member Nariyanan next.
Okay, yeah.
I would actually like to interrupt here a sec. If there is an alternate, the appropriate thing would be is to amend the current motion, because if the current motion passes, that would be the end of it.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what I was going to say, Mr. Chair.
All right. So, Member Foster, would you want to amend? I think this probably is as I think about it here, probably a better way to deal with it, so that you get your voices heard, and others that may join you get to be heard. Because if the main motion gets approved, that's it. There won't be any subsequent opportunity.
Yeah, yep, Elena's right.
So the process would be if she makes an amendment, the amendment is voted. If the amendment passes, then you vote on the amended motion. If the amendment fails, then you vote on the original motion.
Correct.
Okay. Is the floor mine? I'm sorry, I'm a little.
So, Member Foster, you had mentioned that you thought that the ranges don't address the region's priorities, and that you had some thoughts about how to both, I think, shift from what I understood from Elaine was that you wanted to suggest shifting the range and the midpoint in roads and transit categories. So you would move a certain amount of you would change the range in roads, that you would diminish the range in roads and increase the range in transit, and increase the midpoint in transit and decrease the midpoint in roads.
Mr. Chair, and also include bike ped in that shift. I sent my motion to Elaine yesterday, so it could be shared on the screen.
If Greg could pull that, it's on a slide.
Mr. Chair, if
The next
Anthony
slide.
just made that motion, I will second that motion.
What?
The amendment.
Okay, let's
the
make sure
amendment.
that we understand what the motion is, or the amendment, proposed amendment is to the.
Next slide.
That's not this slide. There we go. So the as proposed is what we've been discussing for the past several months. The motion to shift transit and bike ped, the lower chart is the one that I think Member Foster, that would be your potential amendment. Is that correct?
That is my amendment, yes.
All right. And then Member Narayana, you're seconding that motion to amend.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
All right. And then let's go to discussion on the proposed amendment. And then I'm going to go back to Member Narayana.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on the amendment as well.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I was wondering if staff had data right now that could tell us what the total amounts that we spent in the last cycle were on roads versus transit versus bike ped. I know we have the midpoints and the percentages, but do we have the total amounts available so we can actually see what we did?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the easiest way to probably do that and translate these percentages into dollars is to just multiply by 2. And so we've had roughly $200 million available each cycle. So if you look at the percentages, if you can pull it back up on the screen, but you can.
Well, the midpoint as proposed
Yeah,
is at 30%.
So that equates to 60 million for transit. Bike ped 14.5, so that's 29 million. And then 55.5, what's that? 111 million for roadways. So 111 million for roadways, 60 for transit, 29 for bike ped would be the approximate equivalent dollar values to those percentages.
So that's kind of what we spent in the last cycle in reality.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah, pretty. Thanks. And to answer your question, member, and that's fairly close to what we did. You may remember that last cycle we did shift the midpoints ever so briefly. I guess about in the amount of about 5 million. So, Greg, if you could go back just one slide. So previously, so from roughly 2003 to 2018, you can see the midpoints were that 58%, 27, and 15. And then last cycle was a minor shift to transit away from mostly roadways and a little bit of bike ped. And that's the motion you have for you is the 2020 motion. And then, you're considering the amendment, which if you go to the next slide, if you multiply those percentages in what's being considered as the amendment by 2, you'd get the dollar value shift there. So roughly a $6 million shift to transit, and let's see, to roughly $5 million shift to bike ped, and removing a roughly $11 million from roadways to equate the rest of the dollars there.
Thanks, Steve.
Mr. Chair, we had discussion.
Yeah, member Narayana, I think maybe you had further comment. You wanted to get
Yeah.
those numbers, but that was preparatory to making a comment, I think.
Yeah, I don't know exactly. I feel like this is like the movie Inception, where we're in the middle of various amendments to the original motion. But my comment was that I strongly support the motion made by Member Foster, specifically because we in the TPP have said we want to prioritize both equity, climate avoidance of climate disruption through transportation, and also focusing on preserving and maintaining the system that we have. Just in the last cycle or so, we have roughly spent about double the amount on new strategic capacity expansion. 2020, we spent about $64 million on new highway capacity expansion, while we spent just about 28 million on maintaining our existing roadways. And I think that is, paying for something that we don't know how we're going to pay for in the future is just not responsible, in addition to all of the inequitable outcomes that come as a result of that spending. So my strong support would be that we move funding away from new highway capacity and construction that we know directly results in more carbon emissions and more climate disruption, and into equitable and safe modes like transit, biking, and walking. So I really support Member Foster's amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Narayana. Member Foster, I want to go back to you because you were the maker of this motion to amend, and I don't think that you had a chance to articulate yet why you wanted us to consider this as a full tab.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I
Are you comfortable?
I don't have a long speech. I think that as tab members, we set the tone for where we're going to fund our transit system, and that includes roads, bridges, bike ped, how people get around. I don't think it's a good use of our time continuing to have conversations about what equity is and how we score certain projects. I think we have to make those changes in the ranges. Like, this is the place that we draw the line of what our priorities are, instead of spending hours trying to figure out if a project has geographic balance, if it's really pushing racial equity, if it's really addressing climate change. Those conversations are always going to happen. And this is the mode ranges are what guide us and the TAC. And I think this is an opportunity that we can take right now. So I appreciate letting me speak, but I know there's other folks too.
Yeah, thank you. Member Foster,
Chair.
I'm going to go to I think Member Geisler had his hand up next, and then Commissioner Look, and then Mayor Winchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will say just straight out that I think this amendment, while well-intentioned, I think is actually a little bit of a distraction from what we can do when we talk about doing this in various scenarios where we've always considered previously scenarios that are transit heavy, that are bike ped heavy, that have different options, all of which are totally encompassed within what this emotion is attempting to do. So I don't, in this case, I'm actually for leaving it the way it is. A couple other comments here, as far as strategic capacity goes, strategic capacity doesn't always mean making it bigger or adding more roads. Much of the infrastructure and overpass reconstruction that we see, or interchange reconstruction, is replacing old and aging bridges, adding pedestrian safe crossings to those bridges, adding better traffic flow to improve transit routes that are passing over them. These are all aspects that, while it is in the strategic capacity category, much of it is replacing and fixing and maintaining. It doesn't mean it got bigger. You'll also remember some of the strategic capacity conversations. We're taking 4-lane divideds and turning them into three-lane roads with a center turn is a strategic capacity project from a safety perspective. We've talked about those as well. I know many of the other county commissioners will also add in valuable points of where doing road work, we improve all sorts of other infrastructure at the same time. I will also just really, we've been talking a lot about equity and climate change as these missions for the goal, but I really want to highlight, I haven't heard us really iterate, the #1 goal of TAB is the health of the transportation system for all 7 counties border to border, not just inside the 694, 494 loop, not just in the cities of the first class, all the way out to Bethel, all the way down to Belle Plaine, all the way through there. We have growth that is happening in the suburbs, and pedestrian and transit solutions aren't always options for these emerging suburban areas. So I encourage the members, and if you've been around for a while, you know that I was a big proponent of funding the BRT lines the way they are and shifting the 5 million into transit that we did at the last scenario. I absolutely believe that transit is key and important, but buses can't run on roads that don't exist and are in ill health and ill maintenance. So I would encourage citizen members to really think about that and think beyond of what we need to do. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Look, and then the Mayor Winchell, and then on to Member Lindeke.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I cannot support this amendment, and I would like to explain why. First of all, I think in my 10 years that I've served here on TAB, there's been a constant drive to pull money away from roads and to spend it elsewhere. The special project category that we came up with has taken money away from roads, and there continues to be this desire to continue to do so. And I recall very vividly, those of you who served with member Scott McBride, when he indicated, he worked with MnDOT, when he indicated that there just isn't enough resources to even maintain what we have.
Right.
Okay, so if you don't have enough resources to maintain what you have, you are arguably slipping behind. And those of us that have had, experience on city councils or county commissioners, we know that when you get behind on road projects, Mr. Mayor, you probably know this too, catching up with that is a difficult proposition, a very costly and difficult proposition. But what I wanted to say today is that expansion of roadways somewhat gets blamed for adding more vehicles, or that's the belief that if you expand a roadway, you're going to add more vehicles. But what I have to present today is that we've actually done a study with Bolton and Mink in Anoka County, where we looked at Highway 10, and we looked at that small intersection where 3 intersections where it's the highway goes into an expressway. These are at-grade intersections with stoplights, causes a lot of congestion, a lot of stop and go movement. And so we had a study done on that. And what the study came out was that that by 2025, in a no-build situation, in other words, you leave the highway going into an expressway, slowing everybody down, causing that congestion. In a no-build situation by 2025, the emissions, and I'm glad that members have brought up the environmental components that we're talking about here in climate change, because this is specifically directed towards climate change. That by 2025, if you had a no-build situation on Highway 10, you are essentially adding up, it's like 1,000 vehicles in the AM and 2,700 vehicles in the PM peak. In other words, if you do have a build scenario, it is equivalent to reducing 1,000 vehicles on the roadway in terms of the emissions that they have. So what they're doing is they're calculating when a vehicle operates at 60 miles an hour down a roadway, it's operating efficiently. When it stops and goes, it's operating inefficiently. Or when it's idling, it's operating inefficiently. And so basically the study, and this was a $2 million study. So if anyone else has studies out there that they can bring forward and say that that expansion adds more vehicles, I would certainly love to hear it. But the reality is this study has said that it takes 1,000 vehicles off in the AM and 2,700 vehicles off in the PM. And if you bring it out to 2045, it equates to 9,200 vehicles in the AM and 9,500 vehicles in the PM. These are so road dollars. While there's somewhat of a desire to try and take road dollars away and spend it elsewhere, understand that it has a very real impact on emissions that vehicles are giving off, in which 80 to 90% of our public uses roads today. So if we really want to go down this road, and we really want to say that we're trying to impact climate change, it's actually counterintuitive if you're trying to take money away from roads. So I would encourage members to support the current modal funding ranges that we have. We have flexibility, as is indicated by staff, so we can move things around as need be, and we really don't need to go down this road, in my opinion. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm going to go to Mayor Winchell, then Member Lindeke, and then Member Jepson.
And
Thank
I've
you,
also
Mr.
had my hand
Mayor.
up for several minutes and haven't been acknowledged, but I'm also waiting for discussion. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I also would like to speak on this. Sanger.
Yeah, well, I'll get to you.
Okay.
Be patient. This is good. We got plenty of time for conversation here on this important issue. So, Member Jalali, I'll get to you as well as I'll get to Member Anderson, and I'll get to others that want to speak too.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Right.
Member
Mayor
Geisler and Commissioner Look really kind of touched on a lot of my comments and did so very well. But what I do want to just talk about a little bit is that we have spent like a lot of discussion hours on these subjects, and we created these modal ranges and stuff. And we decided, and we've talked about it many times, it was talked about earlier, and it might have been at the exec committee, that we need to let these run through a cycle first. And we have not had that ability to really do that. And I think that it's important that the previous conversations we had about changing things was to say, hey, we put a lot of time and effort into this, staff put a lot of time and effort into this, that we really need to let these cycles run their course and see how they work out. But to the other side, it was explained very well that the modals, the ranges are there and in place. So there's really nothing saying that they can't hit those. So everything's really in place to do that. And that's why they have the ranges are there. So I just think, and like I say, I'll keep mine short as a lot of people want to speak, but we're accomplishing everything. And I think it's just important that we stay there. We already took some money out of roadways the last time. And if we do it again, where does it stop? We still have to, like somebody said, if there's not a good roadway for the transit system to operate on, it's not going to operate. And, so, and like I said, the same thing was touched about how it goes from one end of the metro to the other end. We don't have a lot of transit options, and our transit company is constantly fighting for money to get more and do more, and really butts a lot of heads there. So, I mean, sometimes road expansions, according to the Met Council, Carver County right now is the fastest growing county. If that is true, which I hear, we're gonna have some issues. And then now you go to what Commissioner Look just talked about, is about traffic stopping and going versus operating at efficiency levels. So thank you, appreciate it.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Member Lindeke, and then Member Jepson, and then Commissioner Gattell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for calling on me here. I will be very quick. First of all, I wanted to comment that expanding roadways does increase driving. There are decades of research on this. I'd love to see staff help committee just understand this idea, especially focusing on induced demand and how that works on our highways, not just Twin Cities, but everywhere in the world. And if you like, I can send some examples to staff to share with the committee, but I think that's kind of an important idea to have everyone be on the same page about how that works as we have a conversation and try to build consensus here. So I support this amendment. I think it's really important because transportation is the #1 cause of carbon emissions in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota, and it's rising very quickly. You don't even have to open a newspaper to see the urgency of taking climate action. Although if you do, it's very disturbing. But you don't need to do that because you can just look out the window. I think everyone remembers when the wildfires blanketed our city with smoke this summer. It happened last year too. We need to make change now so that our transportation priorities reflect what we need to do in the future. And this amendment is a very minor change. I think it's the least we can do, and I'm fully supportive of it. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chair. Thanks for talking.
Yeah, thank you.
Calling on me here.
Yeah, oh, you're welcome. Member Jepson, and then Commissioner Gattell, and then Member Hollinshead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Julie Jepson, City of Blaine Council Member. I just want to support Commissioner Look's original motion as well as Member Geisler's comments. So I don't want to repeat anything that's already been presented, but I also one of the reasons why bike ped is a little bit, changing that range is a little bit difficult for me to change that range is because a lot of projects right now, a lot of transportation projects right now are requiring bike ped accommodations in them already. And I like to reference Trunk Highway 65, the Pell study. We were required in that any of the work that we're doing, our priority is also bike ped modalities. So that is already being highlighted and prioritized. And I also never want to negate the fact that safety is a massive response to transportation. You know, we talk about environmental, greenhouse gases, all of this, but we have to talk about the safety of our residents and moving our residents and moving our goods and services. And I vividly remember, and I have told this story over and over again, my very first TAB meeting was when Steve Peterson announced the results of the 2017 traffic study about all of the major safe and unsafe intersections in the 7-county metro. And 5 of the 6 most dangerous and deadly intersections are right along Highway 65, smack in the middle of Blaine. Taking money away from transportation takes away the safety of our residents. And I am not willing to negotiate that. And it might seem like a small amount of money, but taking away little by little is not the answer. $5 million was taken away last year. This year, we're proposing an even greater amount being taken away. And taking it away to give to bike ped, which already is being addressed in transportation studies and projects, taking away from transit. When we heard Member Barber talk about incentives to get people riding the transit system, people are petrified to ride the bus. Routes are being cut. We have park and rides that are still closed in Anoka County. The way people are going to use public transportation because of COVID is going to drastically change, in my opinion, especially in the suburban metro area. So rather than make changes to these ranges, even though they may be small, according to some members, let's just wait and see how people are going to be moving post-COVID. So again, I support Commissioner Look's proposal to keep the ranges as they are. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Member Jepson. Commissioner Gattel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the opportunity. And you know what, I really do applaud my members here for supporting wanting more bike and pedestrians. If you're in some places, it's really difficult to get around. I really understand that, but I also understand the flip side of it, of the many projects I worked on as a mayor and now as a county commissioner. A couple of them that did the very thing that you want done was done within the boundaries of roads that already existed and were reconstructed. And they put in all the bike trails, they put in all safe crossings because we had some very dangerous crossings. We did all the environmental structure underneath them. We even put new larger sewers in. This is 66th Street. But the other piece is the underpass, which I have worked on personally for 15 years and many for decades longer to get that underpass, which would be a road extension. What is instrumental in climate change. And the reason it is because on the very other side of that underpass is one of the largest bus garages for Metro, or our Metro buses. And it was, I can't remember what the amount is. It's amazing the amount that will be saved to go under instead of going all the way north to get onto freeways to go around. It will save literally thousands of dollars and tons of pollution. It also, when we do that, we'll have a bike and pedestrian walkway. One of the things that the county, Hennepin County specifically, is looking at is 0 incidents of pedestrian deaths and what I would call severe injuries. They've only increased. We see it in the paper every week. Every time we do a road, we do all those things together. We don't isolate them. We don't isolate bike trails off of roads. When we rebuild, we put them on them. We widen, we make sidewalks safer. We do all those things, and we look at the resiliency infrastructure as well as many other things around the equity issues. We're dropping empty conduit in there for the possibility of bringing some kind of Wi-Fi experience to those in most need who can't get it, or because there's not enough dollars and they can't afford to pay it, so nobody wants to run conduit to them. We are doing these things and it's not in the system. So, and a lot of them are parts that we look at when we have the technical folks look at these projects. They look at those intricacies if you put them in there, and you score high because of that. County scores high because we do so much extra. So many of my colleagues here do so much extra too when they're doing things. They know where their flood areas are and everything. Their citizens come up and talk to them and they tell them these things. They also tell them about the need, like in Eden Prairie, where they need more bike trails so that they feel safer alongside the roads, and in Bloomington too. So in my district, I see that happening along with the dollars. They don't plan roads just to be roads. Bridges and roads in Hennepin County, a very large amount of them are over 50 years. Now that's a safety issue. That's a huge safety issue. We've had to close bridges down and stop, and that only adds and pushes it someplace else and makes more congestion, more pollution. So I agree there's problems because we can't maintain the system we have. I'm not going to support moving to this just right now. In a better world, when we have more money, there might be things to do that. We have an infrastructure bill that's coming in, and in there is dollars that's specifically for that. I will support that if and when that comes down into the Met Council here. And I appreciate your advocacy and your passion around the issue. I'm just not right there now.
Thank you, Commissioner. Member Hollinshead and then Member Jalali.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to make a couple points. I support all the arguments that have just been given on the supporting the amendment. I want to add 3 points. There's an asymmetry of funding when you look at transit compared to roads and motor vehicles, or let's just say transit compared to personal motor vehicles. I think we are having this discussion in the absence of a total funding picture that includes property taxes at all levels, that includes any other public or private funding that goes into motor vehicle transportation. And so my hunch is, and I submit that, if we had that complete picture, it would show a decisive asymmetry in sources of funding and amounts of funding serving motor vehicles and especially personal motor vehicles versus transit. So I hope we can get that sometime and have a session on it because I think it would be very instructive. My second point is I would like to suggest an analogy. The Metropolitan Council was partially formed and has a long history of building waste treatment and sewers. And when you want to extend a sewer, that has a decisive influence on whether developers can create new subdivisions. There is no such equivalent value system in what we do with roads and what we do with constructing roads at all levels, the municipal, the county, the metro, and the state. There is nothing that enforces any kind of metric on what a new road into a greenfield will produce in terms of future development and traffic. So again, I would suggest that we should have a session and a discussion about the differences between the sewer, the way we do sewers and the way we do roads. So, and then the third and final point I want to make is regarding climate change, it's not just vehicle emissions, which are the biggest single source of climate change right now. It's also the construction and the manufacturing that go into the transportation system, which is oriented primarily toward motor vehicles and primarily within that category toward personal motor vehicles. The manufacturing of motor vehicles, even electric vehicles with the batteries, and the construction of roads with concrete and cement is documented to be major sources of emissions. So we need to, again, we need to consider the whole picture, not just part of it. So I would hope that at some point we could have a session on that too. So those are my 3 points. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be voting for this amendment.
Thank you, Member Hollinshead. Member Jalali, then Commissioner Matas Castillo, and then Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. I think it's great that we're discussing this. I really welcome conversation. I would oppose the original motion of passing as is. I would strongly support the amendment to make a slight adjustment to better reflect the balance of transportation needs our communities are facing. And I've been listening to the conversation and I just want to add some thoughts about why. First of all, I guess I just have to start by saying, and this is from a few comments back, but I was really startled and dismayed to hear Commissioner Look and others repeat the idea that there isn't research to support that investing in roadways doesn't come with a corresponding increase in car usage and costs and all of those pieces. Literally all the research we have shows that adding roads is adding cars, and that means adding to the sunk costs of maintaining the system as it is, which I know very familiarly as a councilwoman now serving the capital city and seeing how we are battling always to ease the burden on our roads and actually not take taxpayer dollars and just put them literally directly back into the pavement to do the same thing over and over again in 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. So to me, adding cars is adding costs. The research shows that if we expand highway capacity, we do that. That's an extremely expensive cycle. And I'm working very hard to manage the sheer amount of streets and roads we're trying to take care of. And I just think this amendment is a modest one that better reflects and invests in the networks that get us out of that cycle. And it is smarter financially. Adding cars also creates less safety. Dangerous intersections are unsafe because they are not designed for pedestrians and walkers and people who are not traveling in a gigantic personal vehicle. And I think shifting these amounts of funding actually supports the build out of the safer transportation network we need. It is an investment in safety. I also think that this amendment will help the city. This amendment will help the city of St. Paul and other communities meet their regional environmental plans through actually funding the investments we need to accomplish these strategies. In the city of St. Paul, we have a climate action and resilience plan that was exhaustively developed with our entire community. It was passed and approved by fully elected governments. And so from a governance standpoint, I think that this body needs to be inclusive of those plans and make sure that we're aligning. Investing in bike and pedestrian transportation within the urban core also does help mitigate the amount of urban road users. I would like to ease the burden on suburbs and surrounding counties by building future regional networks that can be extended to and across the suburbs, easing capacity issues on existing roadways, current and future, and mitigating the amount of commuter traffic and other ways that St. Paul users are on the roads right now. So I do think that it actually is about helping build out that network by shifting these ranges to just better accommodate what we're realistically trying to do. So ultimately, I just think this body should base its policy on the best available research, on financial considerations, and on our future-looking goals. I think this is actually a very modest and appropriate amendment that it much better reflects the membership of the TAB and our goals. And I'd just like to speak very strongly in support of that and that we do this step to continue advancing in a process that I've noted in the notes that folks in the past have really been impressed with what was a thorough process. I think this sets us up even better. So I'm speaking in support of Commissioner Foster's amendment. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Jalali. Commissioner Matas Castillo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is really hard to follow Councilmember Jalali up on her great points, but I just want to also share my support of Member Foster's amendment. I actually think it's a very slight change. I would actually personally go further and make bigger changes for transit and pedestrian, but given the amendment, I will support it. We have recommendations from MnDOT to reduce vehicle miles traveled. We've got sustainability goals. And as Member Barber pointed out earlier, concerns about what we've actually been talking about around equity and the environment and innovation. I think that this amendment supports those as well. And Commissioner Look, I love that you brought up Scott McBride. He and I had breakfast this morning and had this conversation. I would say you maybe mischaracterized his comments from years ago, and that yes, indeed, we need to invest in maintenance, but I'll tell you what requires little maintenance, and little maintenance is required once you build ped and bike infrastructure. It doesn't have the abuse that roads do, and we can shift some movement from our roads to transit, which will also reduce maintenance. So it's a way that we can save on those maintenance dollars by investing in transit and investing in our bike and peds and encouraging both environmental stuff, but also our greater public health because we know when people get up and move and use those facilities, and we have a health savings cost there as well. So I will be very supportive of this amendment by Member Foster. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Johnson, then Commissioner Ulrich.
Thank you. I'm not in favor of the amendment because the basic reason is I think wanting something does not trump where reality is right now. The reason is we are still coming out of COVID. We just had a discussion earlier about trying to find incentives to get people to ride the bus by reducing the prices. You have the state fair that couldn't find drivers for the buses. You have bus lines that are still not in operation because people are not taking the buses. You have people working from home who thus are not taking the buses. But you know what has increased? The type of traffic that is extremely rough on our roads that need to be addressed with. And that is people ordering online, ordering from Amazon, trucks, semis, more traffic from these vans going around, which we all know are very hard on the roads. Washington County has made a significant investment in transit. So I can say that we are very much behind transit. The Gold Line and Washington County residents have thrown a lot of millions and millions of dollars into this. However, we also recognize the continuing reduction in the state and the federal government spending on roads. So as a result, we just put in, added a extra sales tax so we could start dealing with the roads in Washington County because we understand how they are deteriorating from neglect and the extra roads or the extra traffic, the extra people, the extra deliveries and stuff like that. So I understand wanting to where to go with it, but where we just came out of something where the whole conversation is about buses parked in lots, not traveling anywhere, and those buses still need the road regardless, that then we're now looking at putting more money in transit when nobody is riding or interested in transit right now. I know where you want it to go, but that doesn't change where people are using it. And I think we have to identify we have still that issue that we need to deal with. So I just think taking money away from the roads right now, and yes, it's still within the range, but if you change the midpoint, you start the discussion at a certain point, which the way people are, it's going to change and take the money away to transit. So I just don't think right now, when transit has a serious problem of trying to find drivers, trying to find riders, is where you start putting extra money in it. So thank you,
Commissioner. I'm going to go now to, who did we say was next?
Commissioner Ulrich.
Commissioner Ulrich, and then Mayor Sue Sanger has been waiting, I think, for a while. Member Sanger, and then Mayor Stephenson. Thank you.
Okay,
Commissioner
so
Ulrich.
I should go now? Okay. I don't see this battle between roads and bike and ped and transit quite the way it all is being discussed here. Every time we build a road, we build a trail, we build safety, we build a bike and ped component. Most of the mobility in Scott County comes as a result of what was built alongside the roads. And every bit of transit goes on the roads. We're in hand with bike and ped and transit as we build a road in Scott County. I think that's got to be the same way across all the counties. I think we're just looking at it one versus the other. A very small percentage of our trails or bike ped were built apart from a road project. And I don't think Scott County is unique in that. I think all the other counties could say the same thing. Most of your trails, most of your bike ped has been built alongside a road. We don't build a county road without a bike ped component. Am I wrong in that? I just throw that out. I would like to see in the future an analysis on road projects that calls out what percent of that road project had bike ped as part of it. So you'd have a full understanding how much we are really spending on bike and ped and transit in the roadway category. Now we someday in Scott County hope to have on 169 a BRT min-pass lane on 169 going from Scott County all the way up to Highway 55 into Minneapolis. that is only going to happen as we fix the road projects. The 9-mile segment was going to be rebuilt just as was. And we said, no, as a result of the MnPass BRT study, let's expand that to accommodate future BRT MnPass. That's the kind of thing we need to do. So those are my points. And they reflect a lot of the comments of Commissioner Gotel.
Thank you, Commissioner Ulrich. And then Member Sanger, this might be an opportune time for you to also, whatever, in addition to whatever else you're going to say, raise the issue that you raised with Elaine and with me prior to the meeting.
Okay.
Dealing with equity.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the first, with regard to the motion to amend the current motion, I am firmly in support of the amended motion for all of the reasons that have been articulated so far. So I'm not going to repeat them, but I would just add a couple. One is the highlight of that has been mentioned a few times, that is colloquially referred to as build it and they will come. We have to think about, we cannot think about, in my opinion, we cannot think about all roadway expansion projects being the same. So it is disingenuous to me to have some people talk about saving the money for roadway expansion by focusing just on the projects that may indeed help with climate change one way or another. But I think we also have to remember that a number of the roadway expansion projects have been adding more lanes. They're not just safety improvements. And when adding more lanes, you then are going to get more traffic, more cars, more vehicles using those lanes. And so it becomes a vicious cycle. I would much rather spend the money on increasing transit and increasing pedestrian and bike facilities where appropriate. I would also say that, I'm sorry, I have lost my train of thought on. So I will leave that as it is and support Mayor Foster's amendment. The other item I was going to bring up, which isn't directly related to the modal ranges, has to do with how we apply equity criteria in roadway projects. And what has been, I have brought this up in the past several times, and it's basically been received with radio silence. And so I want to bring it up now. I'm not going to be opposing how we go about with our equity definitions now, but I'd like to suggest that for the future, going forward, we try to understand more nuanced way roadway projects. To me, not all roadway projects should have an equity calculation in them. And here's the reason why. If we're doing a project, say it's adding a ramp on 494 somewhere in the western suburbs, 494, 694, and some other roads are used by people all over the metro area. They're used by people who don't even live in the metro area, but are simply going through the metro area to get somewhere else. And so it is, to me, we're not really reflecting whether there is persons of color or low-income people would be disproportionately using that proposed new interchange ramp. And so I would suggest that we look more closely at which roadway projects should have an equity component. To me, you can do a real contrast between 494 and the western suburbs with, if you will, for example, proposing a ramp improvement for the I-94 ramps to and from Riverside Avenue, which are, of course, very close to a area where there is a large number of persons of color and low-income people. Where there, it makes a lot more sense to consider equity. But in some of the other roadways, where I would say we'd be much better off looking at who actually uses the roadway to decide whether there is an equity component there. That to me is an issue that the staff and the tab should look at going forward.
All right, thank you, Member Sanger. Mayor Stephenson, then Member Anderson, and then Member Keeley.
Thank you, Mayor Hovland. I just want to address a couple things that were brought up earlier, just to remind the group of sort of how expansion has historically been tied to the sewer system, and now it no longer is. Historically, of course, we had the MUSA system that went hand in hand in road development. But a number of years ago now, Met Council decided to allow the MUSA expansion essentially throughout the communities. Obviously, up in Maple Grove, Dayton, Corcoran, out that way, the MUSA interceptor line was put through, and we have a full MUSA line. The unfortunate aspect that went hand in hand with that is that there was no accounting for the necessary roads that came with the expansion that now is happening. We have thousands of homes being built up in the northwest suburbs, and the roads weren't planned for as a part of the expansion. And I think that is not uncommon throughout the metropolitan area. We have seen this massive expansion of the MUSA line, and we really didn't have sort of the thought that went with it for the road expansion. There's tremendous needs for roads throughout the community. Obviously, there's tremendous needs for transit and bike paths as well. But I think that given our current status, it makes sense to remain at the current status, go through the cycle and see how it works, and then move forward. I don't think that the amendment makes sense given all those factors, and therefore I'd be voting no against the amendment and for the actual original proposal.
Thank you, Mayor. And then Member Anderson.
Yeah, I'd like to echo what Mayor Stephenson said, and it just been my observation, the tab is very aspirational, and I really like that about the body. I think we're really trying to go where we want to be, but I sometimes think we forget about the world we're living in. And Member Johnson made reference to the the Amazon Prime trucks, and I live on a small cul-de-sac, and I see 10 a day that are going through, and they don't take the bus, they don't ride a bike, it's truck, 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 truck. And it's really getting difficult for businesses to get their people to jobs, to deliver goods and services. We see more, it seems like more congestion, and in the current conditions that we're living in with the COVID, it's been mentioned as well that the bus ridership is down. Let's not forget this is a 2-year proposition. We're not setting this in stone forever. So I would be in favor of just the original amendment, or just the original motion and not the amendment.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Member Keeley, then Member Schember, and then Member Dugan, and then we've had a couple of comments in the chat from Mayor Bailey and Member Bewin. I might want to pick those up too, just to make sure they're part of the record. And just a reminder, if you're done speaking, pull your hand down so that we know who's going to want to be speaking here. So on to Member Keeley and then Member Schember.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What an incredible discussion and debate. I've learned a ton. I joined TAB in January of this year, and I think Councilwoman Member Jalali mentioned she was a new member this year. I can only imagine what 2019's discussion was like, and it sounds like it was spirited, and a lot of great content and information came out of it. I represent the Suburban Transit Association and the suburban transit providers in Maple Grove, Plymouth, Southwest Transit, and MBTA. And so I feel, regardless of what my personal opinion might be in favor or against the amendment, that if there's money for transit, it's my duty and expectation of the association that I advocate for it. And so someone must have successfully done that back in 2019 to get the 5 million moved. And what we're doing today is basically saying, maybe we need more, even though we haven't actually gone through a cycle and allocated this additional money. And so it's a bit of a pickle, because on one hand, I refer back to a discussion earlier that I was advocating for maybe pulling back on, or suggesting that we pull back on the allocation for ABRT out of the $32 million pot for 25 going, because members that I represent now have only access to 7 million for any and all projects. And that didn't feel fair, but we'd only gone through one solicitation cycle and just barely. And so I stepped back and said, fair enough. The argument is the move was just made. It was made by a very educated and spirited debate body of talented people. We'll step back, let another year go by, and let's see where things fall then. And so I tend to fall back on that particular approach for this one. The 5 million was debated and won. I understand there's a need. I'm a huge bike guy. The bridge on I-35 from Bloomington to Burnsville, finally having a pedestrian lane was a huge victory to myself, my wife, and the entire pedestrian community, and something that we really were wanting for a long time. And I believe in today's micro-mobility, there's more demand for pedestrian trails. So I understand the argument on both sides. But today, I think I'm going to voice my support for more money for transit. At the same time, say, because we haven't even allocated this through a regional solicitation, we fought for and got 5 more million. Maybe we should wait till next year, and I will wholeheartedly advocate at that time, depending on how things come out, that we shift more. And I don't want to repeat what has been said. There's tremendous amount of institutional equity and knowledge that's been shared, and I learned a ton from this discussion. And I just wanted to let everyone know, as a Suburban Transit Association representative on TAB, I'm always going to do what I believe is my job and why I was appointed here, and support more money into transit, because that's what I represent. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Keeley. On to Member Schember, and then Member Dugan, and then I'm going to go back to Mayor Bailey and Member Bewin, so we make sure we got a complete record.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I represent freight, so this is an opportunity to remind others, like Representative Johnson did, that bike and ped and transit does not move freight in this region, nor does it move the freight through the region. And when I think about the role of the TAB, it's the overall competitiveness of the region. If our freight isn't moving efficiently, if it's congested, that's time and money that eventually the consumer bears. And we all know and have examples in our head of cities across the nation and maybe globally that don't move freight well and don't move their goods in an efficient manner. And that becomes actually a cost and a tax on the citizenry. So when we talk about equity, I think one thing we have to talk about is keeping our region competitive, keeping our costs in line. That applies to everybody, not just few groups in one part of the 7-county metro area versus another. So I'm going to vote against this amendment. The demand for our roads has become more and more over the last few years. We're not keeping up with what we need to keep our region competitive across the upper Midwest. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Schember. And then Member Dugan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me to speak. As I'm going to be probably coming from the old school, I think I've been on TAB 8 years, and this is my 5th regional solicitation. And I really want to draw comments to, but may I step back, sir? I did see a chat that Councilmember Jepson wanted to make a clarifying point, and I'll certainly defer to her right now if she wants to.
No, you go ahead and finish your comments, please.
Okay, thank you, sir. I commend to you, as you just did, the comments of Member Bewin. I think in terms of regional solicitation, when we get to the making the choices, the hard choices, there's a lot of professionalism and the flexibility and inherent flexibility of choosing projects based on merit. And last solicitation, we made a departure and went through geographic balance as a form of geographic equity, if you will. But if I may just step back, I think sometimes what gets lost is the mission of the TAB is to serve all citizens throughout the metro in dispersing this $200 million. It's not to be, you know, this versus that, or my county versus your county, my city versus that county. And, you know, one of the mission, I've always seen the mission as we're the cavalry, we're the but for. We're not the primary source of funding for transportation, transit, and we are, here's, you know, $200 million that we can allocate that a city or a county may be able to do a project that they, but for that, they couldn't have done. And I mean, what, you know, as we talk about going to the future with CAVs, connected and automated vehicles, well, that will increase traffic on the roads tremendously because you can have less distance between cars or vehicles. And, you know, I've been on all the different commissions or subcommittees, starting with the equity and then the unique projects and the policy work group. And I supported, you know, 25 million to the ABRT and then shifting 5 million to transit. But I think we must trust ourselves to make the right decisions a year from now based upon the merit of the project. And I just have, if I have two suggestions, one is, and I brought this up before, is to ask applicants to rank the priorities. You know, we really need this 1 and 2 rather than just throwing stuff up. You notice there's a variety of cities or counties that just put everything in. The other is, and Commissioner Gattell will kill me on this, but I don't see bridge. I think we should free up the bridge money for perhaps transit. Bridges are not the TAB's responsibility. To me, they're a MnDOT. I mean, that's a basic infrastructure like sewer and water. Not TAB. We're supposed to be the helpers. And if I will not be able to support the amendment, although I can't tell you how much I always support Matthew and Amity, and appreciate Councilmember Jalali's comments and Ash's, because at the very basics, we need to go through at least one cycle to see what works. We just changed the 25 million ABRT. We just changed the spot mobility and safety. We changed some of the house, Amy can comment on this, the equity portions of the application already. And I will just, if I may end with an anecdote, I am in commercial real estate, and I have a lot of out of town, out of state national clients that come in. And one of the things they always comment about is, wow, this place is easy to get around. I want to come here.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to be here. And I drive around a lot, unfortunately. Wish I could take the bus, but one of the TAB projects we funded in Lakeville is the expansion of a little road called Juniper Way. It's actually CASA 70 from I-35 to 77. It's becoming a 4-lane divided highway. Well, that is what brought Amazon there to 750,000 square feet, and the FedEx distribution center, which is even larger. And there's several other major job employees because of that increase in roadway. And I live in Eagan, and I'm so proud of it because people like Councilmember Hanson, you know, they've had the vision to see we need a mixture of, you know, roads and transit. And that's why Eagan is one of the, in addition to being near the airport, because our highway system is so good here, we have several large distribution companies and employers in our northwest, I'm sorry, the northeast section. And again, may I commend to you Member Bewin's comments on the professionalism. And this is the most talented group I've ever been a member of, and I'm very humbled by all of you. So I'm going to shut up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Member Dugan. And then I want to go to Mayor Bailey and then Member Bewin. I want to make sure that as we're recording here, I'm not sure the chat ends up being part of the record or not. So Mayor Bailey?
Yes,
thank
Chair,
you.
I did put it in there, but
Oh, did you? But I can speak to it too,
yes,
just in
go
case.
ahead,
I was having some technical issues. So thank you for letting me to speak. I do agree with the original motion by Commissioner Look, and the member just before me, Mr. Dugan. I totally concur. You know, and I know we're talking about the entire metro area, but as a suburb that's down in the southeast side with basically one roadway, one highway that comes through our area down to Hastings in Dakota County. As we continue to grow, transit options are becoming very limited. And, I would love if there was ultimate funding to have, a BRT, bus rapid transit, or trains, or you name it. It would be fantastic. But the likelihood of that happening anytime in the near future, that's going to help communities down on our side, out in the outer ring suburbs, is many years away. And so my take is, we've only allowed this change, if you will, to happen for one cycle. And so you've got that issue. I think we need to let it go one more cycle through. Second of all, and I concur with some of the other comments that were made. Coming through COVID right now, we still don't really have our hands wrapped around what's going to be changing with the use of public transit systems. And then I think a little bit more time leaving the system the way it is now, and then looking at what are some of the options into the future that maybe there will be a shift that should be made. So I'm not against at some point looking at it. I just don't think today in this round is the right time to do it. So I'll stand for that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. And then Member Bewin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm glad that my what I wrote will make its way into the record. That's really what I wanted to say. I appreciate Member Dugan's comments and support. I agree that this is an indication of where many members want to go, which is, let's not build more roads. Let's provide transit. Let's build out our bike infrastructure. I agree with those things. I want to see less carbon emitted from our transit system. I just don't think that this vote right now is the time where I agree with changing the midpoints. I'm comfortable with going forward with the midpoints as they were, and then using the ranges that were afforded in our discussions that are to come.
Thank you, Member Bewin. Is there anyone who has not had an opportunity to speak yet? I want to go to the end of Member Jepson had a question, and Member Foster's got her hand back up in the air too. Member Jepson, go ahead and give us your question, and then Member Reich will listen to his comments.
Mr. Chair, I got my question answered another way, so I'm good.
Oh, okay, great, thank you. And then Member Dugan, would you pull your hand down, please?
Sure. Thank you for reminding me.
All right. And then Member Reich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the notion that this has been a really good discussion, I agree with that. And I think it's a needed part of the process. I certainly wouldn't want to have a go with the flow autopilot approach to our policies. And so the fact that we're taking this time and it's been a good, robust conversation, I think that's valued and it's important. And I would also say that maybe this is a time where we maybe have, in advance of a conversation like this, maybe some grounding data sets. This debate over induced demand should be something that our staff could factually establish one way or the other. For conversation, relative growth, it's one thing to say there's a 50% growth in one area versus a 2%, but what does that mean relatively to actual numbers? Travel demand, I think there's been some really good discussion about observations around COVID and people working at home, but what does that really look like versus our anecdotes? I think that'd be good to ground. I'm sure I don't know offhand either way, but certainly with our traffic demand folks doing their analysis, that could be woven in if it's not already going to be in a report. But I will want to say for this conversation, it's interesting, both in the executive committee and here, how flexibility in one context is really lifted up. Flexibility really works if we keep it as is because we can move things around as needed to other modes. But wouldn't the same be true if we made the adjustment per Foster's amendment that we could equally recognize the road needs as presented by highly valued and highly scored projects in that category to shift over insofar as they had the merit demonstrated for meeting regional needs. So it seems to me that flexibility is a premium in one conversation and kind of ignored in another. So I just wanted to raise that and bring that up to the conversation that we have that flexibility if this adjustment were made with the amendment that's on the table, logically speaking. And also that would be a good way to, as mentioned by the bus non-BRT investment, that's something that's a lingering conversation from last time. This would give us that flexibility to actually maybe address some of those non-BRT bus investments, which I strongly support actually, and could greatly increase regional balance from that category. Because that's, no category should be an exclusive sort of holder of what, you know, regional distribution holds. I think more buses throughout the system should be a goal. And anything short of that should be contrary to our regional commitments. I would also say that we've had a lot of conversation about how roads, even expansion project with roads, which do take the lion's share of the total amount of money by far, meet all kinds of other needs. And I agree that there's many, many cases of which I could point to in my own area in Minneapolis that that's the case. But it'd be really good to actually have that exposed in a more concrete and forward way. I think Commissioner Ulrich said we should have more data about what these roads projects do. And I think that could, it's not to pick one side of the debate or the other. It actually, I think, enriches and grounds our conversation either way. So I fully applaud that notion by Commissioner or Member Ulrich, and would hope that we'd be able to do that. And then my final point would be, and I think this was hinted at or addressed in one way from Member Dugan, but I'll express it a different way. None of these dollars are for the categories. There isn't a set of dollars, in my mind, a preset dollars for roads that we're taking from. And the same would conversely go through for the other modes. There's not a 8% dollars that should go to, say, bike ped. I mean, we should have regional goals, proposals come forward, and we should be able to make those adjustments. So I think it's the big picture flexibility that I really want to stand for, and wouldn't see anything that would go against our regional goals with the current amendment as proposed. But I think that should be our anchoring thing. Otherwise, we do kind of fall into a little bit of a tug of war between preferred modalities and regional priorities, or specific individual provincial priorities versus the regional objectives.
Thank you, Member Reich. And then Member Culpy, you had your hand in the air as well.
Chair and members, thank you. Following Commissioner Reich is a tough one because I agree that the flexibility is good on both sides. I think as we look at each of the categories and a midpoint and the ranges within it, I believe there is flexibility, and it also means projects need to be submitted, right? So I think that's my, as we come through, we score projects, I want to make sure that we understand like what projects are there. And I think that's why the flexibility is built into our current process so that we can have, this might be a really good project or this might not be, and be able to have that flexibility. So I echo many of the comments today. I think that the conversation was robust and great. So I appreciate that. I'm glad that I was able to be here for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Culpy. Is there anything further, folks? That was really quite a content-rich discussion, I'd say.
Mr. Mayor? Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is Member Sanger. I just wanted to respond to something that Member Dugan brought up. Because I think inadvertently his comments highlight the need for more transit, which is his comments about improving roads leading to more big fulfillment centers and other employers in southern part of Dakota County. If we truly want to promote equity, we ought to be promoting more reverse transit routes so that people from more inner city neighborhoods can get to these good jobs at the fulfillment centers that he is referencing. Right now, we don't really have a good way for people who are looking for those kind of jobs to get to those new employers that are being developed out in the outer fringes of the metro area.
Thank you, Member Sanger. All right. This has been, as I said, I think a very, it's been a terrific conversation, just put it bluntly. Let's now vote on this amendment. So the amendment was to shift monies as between road and transit. We could get it back up on the screen, but it basically provides that for the, as proposed by staff and the work we did on a prior basis, road was 46 to 65%, the midpoint was 55.5%. Under the proposed amendment, that would shift the range to 40 to 60%, the midpoint to 50%. And based on the numbers that were provided pursuant to Member Narayanan's question, the rough numbers are that would involve approximate $11 million reduction in that road category. Transit, on the other hand, would increase by approximately 5%. The midpoint would be raised from 30 to 33%, and that would involve an approximate $6 million increase in transit. And then on bike ped, that shift would involve an approximate increase of about $5 million based on the amendment from bike ped as proposed to bike ped as proposed in the amendment. So I think we all pretty much understand what's happening here. So let's do a roll call of all those in favor of adopting the amendment as stated.
Anderson,
Nay.
Bailey,
Nay.
Barber, Kelpie,
Nay.
Boyles,
Hey.
Crimmins,
Hey.
Dugan,
Nay.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Nay.
Giuliani Stevens.
No.
Sorry, Giuliani Stevens, can you say yours again?
Nay. No.
Thank you. Gotell,
Nay.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
No.
Hollinshead,
Yes.
Jalali,
Yes.
Jepson,
No.
Johnson,
No.
Healy,
No.
Lindeke,
Yes.
Look,
No.
Buin,
No.
Metis Castillo,
Yes.
Narayanan,
Yes.
Reich.
Aye.
Reich?
Pardon, aye.
Reich, you're an aye?
See, yes.
Okay, thank you. Singer,
Yes.
Schember,
No.
Stephenson,
No.
Ulrich,
No.
Williams,
Mayor Williams?
You're muted.
Mayor Williams, we're not getting your vote.
No.
thank you. Windshuttle
No.
and Workman.
No.
Okay, so
The amendment fails 21 to 10 by my calculation.
yes.
All right. Then we've got a main motion, which is to approve the funding ranges by mode for the 2022 regional solicitation as recommended. We've got that motion in place. Roll call, please, with respect to the main motion.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber. Kelpie,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Gotell,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Johnson,
I have a quick question though. It's been so long since we started this. Did we have a motion in a second for this one?
Yes, it was
Yes.
moved by Look and seconded by Windshuttle.
Okay, thank you. Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Linda Key,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Bwin,
Aye.
Metis Castillo,
Aye.
Narayanan,
No.
Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
No.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Jenna, Dugan here. I vote aye. I think you missed me on the roll call.
Yep, I did. Thanks.
Yeah,
Bwin.
a few of us got skipped, the Fs as well.
Yes,
Yeah.
and may I note that before that we took the vote, I believe member Reich, Councilmember Reich was waving to get to say something, so I'm not sure if it's still what he'd like to do, but just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Okay, and what other letter did I miss? Fox?
Yep, Fox is an aye.
Jenna
Foster is a no.
Yeah, I missed your guys' row. Sorry about that.
And
Geisler, did I get you?
No, you didn't. Geisler is an aye.
Yeah, sorry, my eyes skipped your row. Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, everybody. Member Reich, did that vote obviate what you wanted to comment on, or?
Not necessarily. I was going to actually add a friendly amendment to the motion that we just passed.
Yeah,
And it was-
sorry. Gotcha.
But it's truly in the spirit of what we had discussed, I think, on both sides of this discussion today, in terms of the flexibility issue. And I know that we've recognized that and it's been pointed out, but I will note, having some time on this body, that we rarely have explicitly stated it as strongly as we have recently. And insofar as that was very important, I think a sort of confluence point of the different points of view expressed today, that we actually make that explicit. And I wouldn't know if it's out of order if we do resolutions, or can I amend? If it's truly due to the authors friendly, I think it would be in order that we would.
I don't think it would be. I think we've already voted fully, but if you want to offer up an alternative motion, you could do that.
I would just like, maybe I could just put this in the record for the minutes, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Fine too. You just, your comment would be fine.
Super. Well, and I did send this to staff, and basically it says, as we accept the proposed modal funding ranges as reflective of the historical averages from past solicitations, but that the tab reserves the opportunity to allocate funding outside of these ranges based on a full understanding of the cohort of projects and how they relate to the region stated and agreed upon policies around system stewardship, safety, multimodal access, equity, sustainability, health, and guiding land use. And I know this sort of reflects what we've already said is the case, but I would like it be in the record that it was highlighted in a way that was unique to this conversation.
Right.
And
Thank you,
important
Member
moving
Mike.
forward.
I'm thinking that your comments plus several others may be important to have as part of the consideration a year from now, or short of a year from now, when we get to the point in the process where we start having those preliminary funding discussions and things that we want to keep in mind as we move into that portion of the work ahead of us.
And also to state for the record, Councilmember Barber wasn't able to vocalize her audio, but she was no on the amendment and aye on the original motion.
Right, very good. All right, as I mentioned, the ayes have it, and 2021-28 passes as per the original motion. And now we're on to minimum and maximum funding amounts, and Chair Solberg has a few comments that he wants to share with us relative to tax observations there. Chair Solberg?
Thank you, Chair. So I'll try and move through this. I recognize we do have only about 45 minutes left for the rest of the agenda. Short order in front of you, you'll see the application, the min and max awards that were recommended for change through TAC. In part, the traffic management technologies through the technical advisory committee was recognized as needing additional funds, minimum award, $250,000 in relative to the size of those projects was just simply not quite enough to get there. So that was recommended at 500,000. And then the second one that you'll see before you is the pedestrian facilities. And that was a recognition that pedestrian facilities, the expense of those often do also incur things like signals, which a signal in its own right can be a third of what the maximum award was there, along with the required ADA improvements. So the recommendation was to move that award up to $2 million. And then finally, for some of the other feedback, if we want to go to the next slide, there has been discussion over time about the $10 million max award in the strategic capacity area. And TAC did recommend to keep that as 10 million. We've gone through one solicitation that awarded 10 million to projects. From a technical standpoint, projects that these are awarded to are very large, generally in the $35 to $40 million range. The 10 million helps the cities and counties that are applying for those funds and those projects meet the fiscal responsibilities. But also because there are multimodal aspects to those projects, therefore it was deemed that let the $10 million ride for this next solicitation and then reevaluate after having at least two solicitations to see what that does to the overall program. And that concludes.
Thank you, Chair Solberg. Does anyone have questions for Chair Solberg or comments regarding the minimum and maximum award category? And the requested action there is to approve the minimum and maximum funding amounts for the 2022 regional solicitation. And that encompasses the increasing the minimum award in traffic management technologies to 500,000, and then the maximum award in pedestrian facilities to actually to $2 million. And then
So moved, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Look.
Thank you, Commissioner. Moved by Commissioner Look. Commissioner Look moves 2021-30.
Second, Geisler.
Second, Member Geisler. Further discussion? Question? Roll call, please.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber. Oh, we'll have to get that afterwards. Cowpy,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Jelani Stevens,
Aye.
Gottel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg, Hollinshead.
Aye.
Solberg, yes.
Thanks, Holberg. Gotcha. Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Bwin,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
Naryanan, Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson, Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Workman.
Commissioner. Thank you. All right, 2021-30 is approved. Those funding category minimum and maximum amounts are established by the tab. Thank you. And then Chair Solberg, let's move on to 2021-32, which are is the recommendation around measures and scoring guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, as you can see in front of you, there were basically 3 areas that included changes in the scoring measures. Pedestrian safety, which was based on the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan. TAB accepted that readily after that effort that moved forward. The years and traffic volumes for traffic volumes and transit ridership. TAC did accept the recommendation that allows flexibility for applicants to use volumes that take into account that COVID or 2020 was an odd year, so that allows flexibility for proposers to utilize different years. And then third, the equity and affordable housing score, which really did allow more holistically considering the outreach and housing policies in project areas. And so TAC did recommend all those for approval, those being the most significant areas that came out of the scoring measures.
All right, yep, good. Thank you for that presentation. Very succinct and very helpful. Folks have any comments there? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion to adopt 2021-32.
I'll move it. Go Tal.
Second, Wind Shuttle.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we'll get a close second by Mayor Williams as well, the 2 mayors. Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst. On 2021-32.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber has said she's an aye. She's still having audio issues. She was an aye for the last one as well. Cowpy,
Aye.
Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan, Peter,
Dugan,
Yes, sorry, I was on mute. Sorry. Aye.
thank you. Foster,
no, she had to step away.
oh, okay. Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Hotel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson, Jepson,
Member
Oh,
Jepson,
Johnson,
Aye.
Healy,
Aye.
Linda Key, Look,
Aye.
Bwin,
Aye.
Metascasio,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Reich,
No.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Windshuttle,
Aye.
Workman.
Aye.
thanks, everybody. The motion carries. 2021-32 is approved. And we now have our scoring measures and scoring guidance in place. And now all this good work that TAB members have done, that staff has done, that the TAC has done, we need to get this all pulled together and then released for public comment. And that's the next matter before us that Chair Solberg will lead us through. Chair Solberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, if we can move to the next slide. Very simply, TAC did recommend approval. Public, just for those that are online here again today, public comment period would go from September 16th to November 1st. Again, very simple, TAC recommended to TAB to release for public comment. That concludes my comments.
All right, good, thanks. Any questions for Chair Solberg? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adopt 2021-35, which would approve the draft 2022 regional solicitation.
So moved, Anderson. Second, Wind Shuttle.
Anderson moves, Wind Shuttle seconds. Further discussion? Roll call, please, Ms. Ernst. On
Anderson,
2135.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber is an aye as well. Helpy,
Aye.
Boyles, Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Jelani Stevens,
Aye.
Guttel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson, Johnson,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Beatwin,
Aye.
Metascasio,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Reich,
Okay.
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Wind Shuttle,
Aye.
and Workman. Workman?
Commissioner?
Aye.
All right, the matter carries. 2021-35 is approved. We'll get the regional solicitation in proper form and get it released for public comment. Then we'll be back to the tab for further work in the fall. And next, we're on to the Unified Planning Work Program, the UPWP, as we've come to know it. And Chair Solberg will lead us through that one as well. And we may have some backup assistance by both Amy Venowitz and David Burns. Chair Solberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, the UPWP really is that contract between the MPO and Federal Highway Administration to receive funds for planning and ensure that the council is meeting the requirements as established by federal government. So a couple parts. The UPWP is really one of the ways that the Met Council is able to respond to public comments that they receive throughout their activities, but specifically one of the ways that we're able to respond to comments that have been received through the TIP. It is a way of identifying a scientific method of evaluating and providing information for TAB to make decisions. Those products are identified to the federal government so that they can be in part funded through federal funds. That being said, there is a list of products. If we can skip to the next page, and I believe Amy wants to go through some of those.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amy Venowitz, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair and members, I'm leaving my video off again for better connection. As John said, one of the important pieces to note about the UPWP is that this is the place we really respond to the public comments that we've received through a lot of different processes. The TIP is one of the most recent ones, but last year in 2020, we had a TPP public comment where we received comments that followed very similar themes along emphasizing climate change mitigation, travel demand management, electrification, equity. Those are some of the themes we have been consistently hearing throughout our public comment processes. So when you look at the list of activities that are continuing, you see some of them. The electric vehicle adoption specifically is helping us address climate change. We have a regional travel demand management study that will just be getting underway, and that really is going to look at how we continue the success of teleworking that we've been experiencing during COVID. We have safety work. We've got a number of comments about transportation safety. And then at the bottom of the list, you see the equity evaluation for regional transportation investment. This will be kicking off in early 2022, and we'll be coming back to you with information items about that, but actually about all of these studies you will see along the way over the next couple of years. So I don't want to cover any of them in more detail, but I did want to bring your attention to the fact that we think this list of studies, and the studies will be beginning on the next slide, please, Greg. So these are new studies, and some of these are also addressing those themes. As I said, we'll be bringing them to you for information items, comment, questions, and this is where we primarily are able to react to the comments that we've been receiving in our public comment processes. And with that, I can take any questions.
All right, questions for Amy Venowitz or for Chair Solberg? Thanks for that explanation. I think we all find comfort in the fact that some of the public comments we heard during the tip are going to be addressed in the UPWP, and that's very, very helpful. Hearing nothing, is there a motion for the tab to recommend to the Met Council the adoption of the 2022 Unified Planning Work Program as embodied in Action 2021-23?
We have 2 raised hands.
Oh, all right. We have questions, or what people want to make the motion? Let's get a motion then a second on the table first.
I'll move it, Gotell.
Second, Anderson.
All right, we got a motion by Commissioner Gotell and a second by Member Anderson to adopt, to have the tab recommend the adoption of the 2022 UPWP to the Met Council. Now it's time for discussion. We got a couple raised hands and I'm not seeing them, so would you just speak up?
This is Becky Petrick, and I apologize. I have not been called on the roll call votes for the last 4 or 5 votes.
Yes, Member Petrick, we didn't see you join, but I noted your eyes for the record, and I'll call on you for these remaining votes.
Okay, and I did say, aye and present for the initial roll call, so I don't know what happened.
Thank you, Member Petrick.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
We'll make sure your vote is counted.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, we got a motion and a second, no further discussion. Roll call, please, with respect to potential adoption of 2021-23.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber, Helpy. Oh, hold on a sec. Let me. Barber's an aye. Helpy, Boyles,
Aye.
Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox, Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Gotell,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson, Johnson,
Aye.
Keeley,
Aye.
Lindeke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
Metis Castillo,
Aye.
Naryanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Winshuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Motion carries. 2021-23 is approved, and we will send the UPWP on to the Met Council with our recommendation for adoption. The last matter we have in front of us today is the one that Chair Solberg spent some time on at the beginning with his remarks. The MnDOT functional classification system potential changes. The requested action here is the approval of the recommendations put forth by the MnDOT-led review of the region's functional classification system. I'll turn now to Chair Solberg for further explanation.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, for members before you, this is a process that is supposed to take place generally within a couple years of the census. That did not take place in the metro area after the 2010 census. And FHWA, well, shall I say, insisted that MnDOT follow through with its requirement. And so beginning in 2019, taking approximately 2 years, we've been systematically working with counties and cities to review the functional class of the entire system in the MPO area. As a result, each county and each city has been contacted, and in what resulted in some meetings, others resulted in more emails, but ultimately for those cities and counties that may have been unable to contact, the state did move forward and with the communications process through trying 3, 4, and sometimes 5 times to engage those cities. So I think you would see that this is a pretty in-depth engagement process to determine the regional system. That being said, the regional system was overseen by a working group that directed the work from both county, city of the first class, the MnDOT state aid, and MnDOT metro district. So those were the key partners in this. There was a process in place wherein if a city or county disagreed with the recommendation of the state team doing functional class, they could appeal. There were no appeals to the functional class that was that's before you today. Today's approval does also include 2 roadways from Dakota County to achieve principal arterial status. That is CSAH 23 and CSAH 70. So those were 2 other principal arterials. Otherwise, the rest of the corridors would fall into that minor arterial, collectors, and local streets. TAB did recommend approval, or I should say TAC recommended approval, and I would stand for any questions on this particular item.
Questions for Chair Solberg with regard to the recommendations put forth with regard to functional classification? Thank you, Greg, for taking down the presentation. All right. Anybody from Dakota County care to move the matter?
Dugan will move.
Holberg, second.
All right. Member Dugan moves. Commissioner Holberg seconds the adoption or the recommended the approval of the recommendations put forth by the MnDOT-led review of the region's functional classification system as embodied in action item 2021-25. Any further discussion? All right, roll call, please, Ms. Ernst.
Anderson,
Aye.
Bailey,
Aye.
Barber is an aye, Kaupe,
Aye.
and Kaupe, we got your aye from last time. Boyles, Crimmins,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
Dugan,
Aye.
He
Thank
was an
you.
aye.
Foster,
Aye.
Fox,
Aye.
Geisler,
Aye.
Giuliani Stevens,
Aye.
Patel,
Aye.
Hanson,
Aye.
Holberg,
Yes.
Hollinshead,
Aye.
Jalali,
Aye.
Jepson, Johnson,
Aye.
Healy,
Aye.
Lindicke,
Aye.
Look,
Aye.
Bewan,
Aye.
Mattis Castillo,
Aye.
Narayanan,
Aye.
Petrick,
Aye.
Reich,
Aye.
Sanger,
Aye.
Schember,
Aye.
Stephenson,
Aye.
Ulrich,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Wind Shuttle,
Aye.
and Workman.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. The motion passes. 2021-25 is approved, adopted. Thank you, Chair Solberg, for all that good work. And to all the members of the TAB over the past few months, this has really been quite a process. It's the most rigorous sort of regional solicitation process that I've seen so far, and with great comments and participation from very smart and capable members. So I really appreciated all the good work that you did over the past few months. I think you deserve a round of applause. You get in the give yourself a artificial hand, applause hand. Does anybody have any other business for the TAB? I will just say that to the point that Member Sanger raised, we had some email dialogue, and Elaine, I think you should send that around to everybody so they can see that as we get to the point in the process a little later on here where we start thinking about projects themselves and the applicability of some of the concepts that we talked about that were important today. I think if everybody had a basic understanding of the federal requirements around equity in all projects, it would be helpful. So if you
I'll
could
do
send
that.
that around as well.
I'll do that.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chair? Mr. Chair?
Member Dugan?
Yeah, just very briefly, I wanted to thank Member Sanger for her comments and about my inadvertent support of transit, and she couldn't be more correct. Getting transit for getting people to jobs is critical. However, as we know, like in Dakota County and perhaps the southern part, we just do not have the transit service, and those companies have utilized their own private bus service to come and collect employees. I'm not sure what the collection points are, and then bus them in. And I think the same is for the Shakopee Amazon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Member Sanger.
Yeah, and I think this could be the final comment, but Member Dugan, you put yourself out there and it caused me to think about something that I think everybody will be interested in knowing about as it pertains to your family, and that is that your daughter Kate has been admitted into the FBI Academy. And we all wish her the best, and she's quite a young woman, and we got to know her a little bit over here at our office
Yes,
over
sir.
the past year or so, and it's really everybody's so pleased for her. So, Member Dugan?
Even though it's supposed to be confidential, but if I may, it's obviously we're quite proud of her. 780 agent candidates were taken from 15,000 applicants. It took the process about 2 years and 3 months. And, you know, I just, as a point of reference, I am a former FBI agent, so I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, and that had, I don't think that had one thing to do with it, but she stood on her own, and she told me
did
that
it
you
all
can
on her
read that
own,
letter
and
over and over again.
I couldn't be more proud of her, but you know, when you have children, you can say you never would have thought. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful opportunity for her. We all
Mr.
wish
Chair,
her the best.
Mr.
So,
Chair, just if I could, Mr. Chair, one thing, I just want to comment on Sue Sanger's comments as well about the reverse commute to work. Southwest Transit has been doing some of that around here. So there are bus services that are trying to do those innovative things like that to make those systems work like that. It doesn't always work, and especially now it's probably more challenging, but they have been working on projects like that already.
all right, good. Well, folks, we will see you in a month. And as I say, again, good work. Thanks to all of you for being such terrific members of this organization and representing the region so well. Not only your own interests from your own particular neck of the woods, if you will, but just the region as a whole. It was a great conversation today. Thanks again, and we will see you next month. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Great job today again.
Thank you, Chair.
Too.
Thank you, Mr.